This is the Zoom Platform Podcast.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Zoom Platform Podcast. This is episode 4, where we'll talk about the 7th generation, which is, of course, the Microsoft Xbox 360, the Sony PlayStation 3, and the Nintendo Wii. Now, before we get into the 7th generation, we wanted to touch on a few other topics from the 6th generation, because quite frankly, 2.5 hours? It just wasn't enough. So, those sultry voices you're hearing in the background are, of course, my co-hosts, Mr. Cameron Stark and Mr. Max Petrosky.
Yo, yo.
These pretzels are making me sultry. Oh, boy. Seinfeld reference for today's episode there. So.
Oh, hey, we got to do that. We got to have our Seinfeld references. What's the deal?
An episodely Seinfeld reference.
Yeah, like, and if we forget one, we just throw in a slap bass or something.
Yo ma, yo ma.
we'll have that also includes any sort of Nedry reference from Jurassic Park as well. So Dotson. We got Dotson here. See, nobody cares. Well, we broke Jordan already, so.
Oh, man. Well, now we got to do JFK, right?
Oh, God.
Hey, Daddy-O.
That is one magic loogie. Okay. Okay, enough.
So welcome to our Seinfeld podcast.
We like to have fun here. We're not serious like those other podcasts.
Exactly.
So, I guess the first thing was you guys were talking about, and I agree, there's a lot of games that we used to play, on Xbox Live that have been discontinued, but then there are games like, say, Halo 1, which didn't even have Xbox Live support, but had System Link support, and live on to this day because of that, thanks to all the tunneling services like XB Connect and Xlink Kai. So why don't we talk about that a little?
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating that games from that era, or any era really, that had online play, from like 6th generation, for example, or even games today, any game really that has its official online service discontinued. And one game that I thought of was Resident Evil Outbreak, which I mentioned last episode. And its sequel, File 2. Both of those games, for the sake of simplicity, I'll just refer to them as Resident Evil Outbreak, but those games went offline in, I believe, 2007 or 2008. Capcom took the servers down for both of those games, and because those games were so unique, they filled a niche that wasn't being filled by any other game, really. They had a lot of fans, and there were many people over the years. I did a lot of research into it over the past 10 years or so, because I've wanted to keep playing those games online, but because the servers were down, there was no way to do it. And I've been looking up to see if there's any way, someone could create a custom server, or like how you would do that, or if there's anyone out there doing it. And over the years, I've run into 2 or 3 blogs where various different people, just software engineers with some time on their hands or something like that, were trying to create a custom server, but they would always get stumped on different parts. Like, some of them just couldn't get very far, or they just dropped the project for whatever reason. But there was one guy who got really far, but he couldn't get the packets, because it turns out that one of the key components that you need to create a custom server for any, I guess particularly a PS2 game, maybe this is true for any online game that you're trying to emulate servers, like the actual official servers, you need the packets, like the original, like a sample of the original packets. And Max, I don't know if you know anything about that. If you could, I don't know if you know anything about.
Well, so TCP/IP protocol, which is what we're talking through right now. Well, actually, no, that's VoIP. But no, I know that is, yeah, because voice over IP, that's TCP/IP. So
it's still a direct connection as opposed to communicating with a server.
Right. So basically, what's happening right now is, according to the TCP/IP protocol, is that our voice is being sent as digital data, and it splits up that data as what we call packets, and the packets have it's essentially a chunk of a file, and it has a header information, a checksum information, for error correction and stuff like that, and
like an MD5 hash, and kind of like when you do a ping test in command prompt, just in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's definitely some basically the majority of communication protocols use the packet thing, but well, anyway, for at least the most the popular one, which is TCP/IP, anyway, but that's that's basically how your data gets communicated. Your computer sends packets to the server that's saying, "Hey, I'm trying to connect to you," whatever. The server sends back packets, that sort of thing. So all the data that's for a game session or whatever, that's all sent through these little chunks, these little data chunks called packets. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so that was like one of the key components they needed to emulate a server, was to have a sample of some of those packets, and somehow this guy eventually got a hold of them, or maybe he was somehow able to create,
to duplicate,
manufacture his own. Yeah. But there's a guy out there named The Fog who he was able to create his own server for the Resident Evil Outbreak. Well, 2 servers for the Resident Evil Outbreak games, and he's currently running them on observe.org, obsrv.org, Outbreak Server Resurrection, and I just think that's amazing. I think it's amazing that somebody went through, that's truly passion right there, truly dedication to a game like that, to take the time and really dig and make a project out of it, to get games back online like that. It's just so cool playing those games again from 2005, 2006. I guess about 2006.
Well, if you go back even further, though,
or 2004, actually, 2004.
The Dreamcast community, they're doing a lot of that too, like with Alien Front Online, and Quake 3 Arena, Unreal Tournament, even Phantasy Star Online. There's DLC
that's right.
for Sonic Adventure 2. They recreate all that. And that, and like I said, I love those tunneling services, kind of like crossover cable, essentially, to be able to play System Link with somebody, around the world. It's just great that there's still a community to support that, and, classic games, because technically we can consider this generation and even the 7th generation, which we're going to talk about next. I mean, maybe not classic in the traditional sense, but they are now historic, if you can believe that.
No, it's true. Yeah.
And the quick add on to the packet thing there is that, it's much like, any other, when you're hacking any other video game, you have the data in front of you. You just got to figure out how the computer is utilizing it. So packets, depending on which communication protocols, are going to be different. So, like in point-to-point protocol, for example, the packet's formatted in 8-bit bytes, but other protocols, use the header information and stuff to denote, what the version number is, what the quality of service is, the length, the fragment offset, the checksum, etc., source IP, destination IP, etc. So basically, whatever that game used or the server used must have been different enough that the guy had to reverse engineer the packet and figure out, okay, that's that, sort of like pretty much any sort of like reverse engineering project.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just really quick. I'm interested to read up on how he did that, because that's.
Yeah, me too. I just find that really fascinating. Like just being able to reverse engineer networking technologies like that. That's really cool.
So let's see here. So what you were gonna say, Jordan?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you guys in terms of that it's just amazing how they've reverse engineered all that, and you're keeping these games alive. I was just it kind of reminded me too, because we were talking about games that can still be appreciated. I wanted to touch on as well some games we were talking about earlier that maybe weren't as appreciated as much as they should be or should have been back in the day, and hopefully people can revisit them now. For example, we were talking about the Star Wars games of the last generation, and I forgot, one of the Xbox launch titles was Star Wars Obi-Wan, and at the time it got terrible reviews, but at least for me personally, I very much enjoyed that game, and it had a great multiplayer mode, and much like Enter the Matrix, it wasn't really pushed. In fact, with Enter the Matrix, it was even worse, because you had to actually use a cheat code to even access it. But like I was saying, Star Wars Obi-Wan, definitely very underrated Star Wars game, and people should definitely check it out. Did you guys ever play that one?
What was the multiplayer mode like in that?
It was pretty much just lightsaber battles, and you could throw it, you could just swing it, and you jump around. It was just pretty basic lightsaber battles, but it was a lot of fun because you ran with the left stick, and with the right stick you swung your saber, or I think you clicked it to kind of throw it and have it boomerang back to you.
Huh. Yeah, I had always wanted to play Star Wars Obi-Wan, but I never got a chance to. I'll have to see if I can find a copy sometime. I really do want to play it, even though, yeah, like you said, it got kind of mediocre reviews, but...
Yeah, it's kind of like, it reminds me a lot of the James Bond games of this era, which I don't think get enough credit either. And if we go back actually even into the 5th generation, one of the last games, and it was Eurocom, who's a fantastic developer, just period, they had developed a game based on The World Is Not Enough, and the Nintendo 64 version was actually very, very good. It wasn't GoldenEye, but it had kind of its own feel, and the multiplayer even had bots, and I'd put it up there with Perfect Dark. That was a lot of fun too. Did you guys play as they used to call it, Twine?
What is it?
Well, the essentially an acronym, Twine. The World Is Not Enough.
I was going like, is that like a protocol or something? Or
yeah, I was like the only Twine I know is the interactive. But the interactive storytelling program. But no, again, World Is Not Enough was another game I always wanted to play. I know some people refer to it as like GoldenEye 2. Because it is very underappreciated. It was also a good Bond game.
Yeah, exactly. And for example, Agent Under Fire was pretty good. Nightfire was incredible. That was the tie-in for Die Another Day. They got Pierce's likeness, but not his voice for that game. But Nightfire was fantastic. Great first-person shooter. That was another Gearbox port, by the way, too, I think, on PC. Huh. After that, you had Everything or Nothing, which was kind of a return to the third-person shooter format like they did for Tomorrow Never Dies, but they really did a great job. It was an all-original storyline. They got Pierce's likeness and voice. They got Willem Dafoe as the villain. They got Heidi Klum. They got John Cleese as R. I mean, it was Judi Dench as M. I mean, they got all the voices. They did all the models, and they actually did a really great job. It didn't really have that great of a multiplayer, but the single-player more than made up for it. Did you guys play Everything or Nothing?
Was that Everything or Nothing?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I didn't.
Everything or Nothing is the third-person one. And they had like the whole cover system and everything before Gears of War. I think this was 2003, and they had the whole cover system figured out. I mean, like I said, before Gears of War, and it was so cinematic. I mean, they knocked it out of the park. And then after that, they had GoldenEye Rogue Agent, which was okay.
I did play Rogue Agent. I beat that. I played it all the way through, and it was okay.
And then the last one EA did, because I guess what I'm saying here is I think once Activision got the Bond license, that's when it really, unfortunately, took a dive. With the exception of maybe 007 Legends, which was good, but not great. They had that running off the kind of Call of Duty Quake 3 engine. But EA's last one was actually, they modeled it after Connery with the From Russia with Love. It had that same third-person perspective as Everything or Nothing, but that was pretty good too. It wasn't as good as Everything or Nothing, but it pretty close. You got the jetpack, and it really gave you that kind of that 60s vibe.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in I think in Blockbuster, but I never checked it out.
I would even compare it a little bit to, of course, it's like I said, a third-person shooter, but it still had the same vibe as, like, say, No One Lives Forever.
Yeah, there's another classic series.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Oh, and if we want to talk acronyms again, NULF.
Yeah, NULF.
Yeah, I remember seeing that a lot. Especially with the Tron 2.0 community and stuff, because it's similar engines and whatnot.
Well, they're both
yeah.
Monolith.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we were talking before, like how Half-Life went to PS2, and I think NULF, the first one, went to PS2 as well, but the second one was still a PC exclusive.
Yeah, I was reading an article recently talking about. I'd have to dig it up to remember exactly what it was, but it was talking about how underappreciated the No One Lives Forever series is, and also about the huge graphical jump between the first and second game. Like you look at the first game, and I think there was only a couple of years between them.
I think it was just 1 year.
Yeah, maybe 1 year. Like the first game, Kate Archer has like her face is just a single. It's just like a texture. It's just like it's like flat polygons with a texture that animates. But then in the second game, she has like a fully animated face, like a fully modeled and animated face, and that was at a time before a lot of games were doing that.
And just to correct myself there, and to answer your question, the first one was in 2000, second was 2002.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's 2002. Well, okay, so yeah, I guess it was about the time that other games were starting to have fully modeled faces.
Well, the one in between it was a great game as well that Monolith made. 2001 was Aliens vs. Predator 2, another underrated one.
Yeah, that's another game I've been really wanting to play too, yeah.
Well, the sad thing about all three of the games, Aliens vs. Predator 2 and the two No One Lives Forever, is the rights are tied up pretty tight between multiple parties. Hopefully one day, I can't go into details on anything really at this point, but hopefully one day.
Oh, keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you. So I guess without further adu, why don't we jump into the 7th generation with the Xbox 360, which is obviously it's kind of the PlayStation 2 of its era. It kicked butt. It's funny about it though too, because it was, at least initially, it had a lot of great exclusives, but later on it was just the definitive place to get your multiplats, but it was still number one. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I will kick off this conversation by saying, as a side note, sort of, that I think this generation, 7th generation, went on entirely too long. Because we ended up having, it started off amazing. You had these amazing games. You had Gears of War, Dead Rising, Oblivion. Started off with these awesome launch
Call of Duty
titles.
2.
Call of Duty 2, which we can of course go into more detail of later. But started off awesome. But I was just thinking about late in the 360's lifespan, and the PS3 and everything. I really feel like the technology the hardware wasn't keeping up with the software towards the end of their lifespans.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, are you like me and think that period when that started to happen was kind of 09, 10?
Yeah, I would say that's about right.
Maybe 11, but yeah, that right in that part of the era, let's say, that's when I felt like, okay, we're just getting sequels now, nothing really new.
Yeah, well, not just
got
that, but like
you're
getting games that really should not have been released on those consoles because the consoles could barely handle them. You get games that like take forever to load. They have terrible graphics, terrible frame rates, like running sub 30 frames per second. And it's like, why are we still doing this? The consumers aren't happy with these titles because they're not running well.
Yeah, definitely.
An example for me that I can give, and this is actually a little bit earlier of a title on 360, but I played the first Mass Effect. I think I played it twice on 360. Because I remember there was a period of time where like I played the first Mass Effect before the other two came out, and then when the second one came out, I was like, okay, I'm going to replay the first one again so I can remember before I go to the second one. And by the time I beat the first one, I got busy with other stuff and I couldn't play the second one. And so then I forgot everything again and I had to play the third time.
I'm glad you brought up Mass Effect, because that was kind of what I was saying about 2007 really being the height of 360 and maybe even this generation. Because you know what that holiday was? That was Mass Effect, like you said, the first BioShock, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, Halo 3, Half-Life 2 The Orange Box, and if you want to, Rock Band.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. That was just incredible, especially for the 360.
Yeah, that was... You're right, that was a huge year. But
did Uncharted... Was Uncharted also 2007?
Yeah.
The first one?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. See, there you go.
Man.
Orange Box, that was really pushing the limits. Valve, because like that's the funny thing was that once the PC version of Team Fortress 2 kept on getting all these patches, the Xbox version wasn't getting those patches, so people would break the game horribly on Xbox. It was the characters, the way the Source engine works is you have a skybox that's rendered outside of the map, but that's still technically a playable area. And it's 1/16 the scale, so basically everything that's inside the skybox area gets scaled up to 16 times bigger and is projected onto the sky. So a player could walk in there, and then you have a giant, engineer standing in the middle of 2 fort, So they broke that really bad. But because what happened was there wasn't the DLC, there wasn't enough space for the Xbox to perform.
That's what's happening with Grand Theft Auto Online now too. They had to stop doing updates for the 360 and PS3 versions because there wasn't enough memory in the console to handle it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that also may be trying to push the newer versions, but probably running out of technical limitations too.
Yeah.
Funny thing too about this era, as much as I loved Oblivion, especially because you got Patrick Stewart and Sean Bean, which was really cool to me as characters, that's when you saw, instead of, because Knights of the Nine was great, that expansion pack, don't get me wrong, I love the Call of Duty map packs, because I was really into Call of Duty until I was going to say
there was Call of Duty map packs in Oblivion.
Sorry, no, I was just talking DLC as a whole. Oblivion's the first time we got kind of nickel and diming DLC. Remember the horse armor?
Yeah, the horse armor, of course.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, that was like when the horse armor was like the first thing that made people go, "Oh God, this is what we're going to be getting for this is the end. This is the end of gaming, microtransactions and DLCs."
Yeah, and it didn't happen that quickly, but towards the end of this generation, it really started getting bad. I mean, as much as we loved Gearbox back in the day, Aliens Colonial Marines, you essentially got, I think, 2/3 of the game, and then did we mention you have to buy the ending?
Really? I didn't remember that. I just heard it was a terrible game.
Well, I guess that too.
Wow. Yeah, and the development of the development cycle of that game was very unfortunate, but I wish that had turned out better.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Really quick, just as a really quick tidbit that I find absolutely fascinating. Cameron, you said earlier that the 7th generation felt like it went too long. The 2nd generation of video games has the record for the longest from, according to Wikipedia, from 1976 to 1992.
Wow.
Guess what was that console that was finally discontinued in 1992?
Atari's probably.
The Atari 2600.
Wow.
The last, yeah,
I should have guessed that.
yeah, it was,
Wow.
yeah. It was the Atari 2600 Junior, and they kept on selling. That came out like in '86 as the cost reducted version. That was in market until '91. That's
Wow.
absolute. Talk about, getting your money's worth there. Jeez.
Yeah.
That just blows
Wow.
my mind. So, but yeah. So
I'm guessing that this generation was close though, because I was trying to think where you're going with it. Like,
well, it just goes to show, like, you would think 2005 2017 is a pretty long time, and it is hardware wise. But back then, in the apparently, but if you're lucky, if you're frugal enough like Atari, you can make it last almost three
I see.
decades.
and that's also with it competing against itself too, with the 7800 and
Exactly.
5200, all that stuff,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
with those giant joysticks.
So, but I digress. So we'll go back to good old 7th gen.
Well, what I was going to say earlier about Mass Effect was that was where I had first started to really notice the technical limitations. Because even though Mass Effect was a 2007 game, and maybe it was just my 360. Maybe my 360 was it was getting old and it wasn't able to. It was maybe it was starting to run hot or something, and so the graphics weren't. That doesn't even make sense. I don't know, but I just remember Mass Effect. My experience with Mass Effect, playing it through it the first 2 times on 360, was I just expected the game. It was a given to me that this game has long loading times. The textures take like 9 years to load. I would go into so many areas in that game where it would go through the loading screen and go through loading. The game would finally load up, and even if it was loading into a cutscene, if it was a in-engine cutscene, the textures would not load for a good easily 10 minutes or so. It would just be it would look like an N64 game. It would be textureless for like 10 minutes or so, just like sitting there with like all these like blurry models and everything, and then finally the textures would start popping in and loading, and so it made for a lesser experience, even because even in the cutscenes it was doing it, much less the gameplay. Not to mention the gameplay.
Well, it might have been too, obviously, with the 360 had that interesting architecture, like we said before, how the GameCube was built on PowerPC, as was the 360. We always talk about how ironic it is that Microsoft went with that, but maybe as well with the dreaded 3 red lights, maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and also Mass Effect 3 was on Unreal Engine 3, which Unreal Engine 3 was a great engine, but sometimes I think it wasn't quite as optimized as it could have been. And it did have a texture streaming feature that I think didn't always work so well. And I think in the case of Mass Effect, I think it wasn't optimized. I think the pipeline wasn't optimized properly or something. But needless to say, when I finally played Mass Effect for the last time, when I finally played it and then went on to the second game right after, I played it on PC. And then I went on to the PC version of Mass Effect 2 right after that, and then played Mass Effect 3. And when I played it on PC, it was a totally different experience. The graphics looked so much better from the get-go. And then there was no texture popping at all. Much faster loading times, no texture popping, much better graphics. It was an amazing experience, and it was a great experience to have in my last playthrough of that game. But it made me think about the 360 version, what was going on there. But
well, I think I was going to say the other thing with the 360, or at least I'm glad you brought up Unreal Engine 3, is that engine was just so overused that towards the end of the generation, every game looked the same.
Generation. Yeah.
guess what, guys? Guess what was the best-selling game on both the 360 and the PS3?
GTA 5.
You got it on both consoles. Technically Kinect Adventures, but that's a pack-in, so we won't count it. Grand Theft Auto 5 sold 15.34 million units on 360 and 17.27 on PS3.
Wow. Yeah, I owned it on PS3, and then I got the PC version later.
Pretty crazy. And the Kinect Adventures, if you want to count it, that had 24 million, but again, it was packed with the Kinect and everything.
For me, the Xbox 360, we were very fortunate because my brothers and I didn't get the 360 until 2008. So
you missed out on calling Max for your Microsoft repair rep.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So we were very lucky because that was like the first generation of 360s that did not have the dreaded red ring def, and so we were very fortunate in that regard. And that was also too when they rehauled the dashboard and stuff. So it was a different UI. The PlayStation 3, we got the slim model, and so that was also later on. What cracked me up was, and Cameron knows this is an inside joke with Cameron too, is the E3 press conference for the PlayStation 3 in 2006, and I quote that all the time because it's Kaz Hirai was hosting it, and PlayStation 3 holds the record. I think it's the second most expensive console at launch, which is behind the 3DO. But it was like Kaz Hirai at the conference, like PlayStation 3 will retail for $599 and it's just
wasn't that also the console where he wasn't that also the conference where he says Ridge Racer?
It is. Yeah,
because it was on the PSP. He was trying to sell the PSP.
It's Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer.
Genshi 2 is an action game.
That's right. There's also that one too.
Actually, took place in real events that actually took place in real age Japan. So here's this giant enemy crab, and you have to attack its weak point for massive damage. It was pure comedy gold, but
yeah, E306 was a gold mine.
Yeah.
Well, I think was it that E3 or the E3 before where they still had that boomerang controller.
Oh, that was the E3 before.
Yeah, it must have been before.
I just remember seeing that and wondering, am I going to like this controller or not? I always wondered what that would have felt like.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I always wanted to hold one and see what it felt like.
Yeah, it was. That was a very interesting controller, and it's talk about like what a radical redesign from prototype to a final product. But like even the GameCube prototype controller was not that radically different. So that I always find that fascinating. But
well, the other thing too, you were talking about how you got a later 360, which I think probably was the Jasper model when I think the red lights were pretty much gone. But you had kind of the opposite with the PS3. You really wanted a launch model because the 60 gigabyte one still had the memory card reader, but and the 4 USB ports. But more importantly, it had the Emotion chipset in there, so it was hardware. It was hardware. The actual hardware for the PS2 and PS1 were in there to play those games, so it was 100% compatibility. Then they went to an emulator, and you basically at one point pretty much just had PS1 backwards compatibility, and then eventually even that was gone. Yeah. So you really wanted the launch model there.
Yeah, that's a rare exception where the original fat PlayStation 3 is the one you want. And my friend Rick, he had one, and I think he still does have it. But here in Florida, we're the lightning capital of the world. So yeah, so the lightning bolt hit his TV, blew up his TV, and the voltage power spike went through the HDMI cable, zapped the HDMI video off of the PlayStation 3, so he doesn't have HDMI anymore. So, but amazingly, the console still works, but he has to use composite video, and even then, there's a horrific audible hum.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
At least they didn't get the yellow, what was the PS3's kind of 3 red lights was the yellow light of death.
Right, yeah.
I'm not familiar with that.
It wasn't as common, but it was pretty much, it meant your system was dead.
Didn't it have something to do with the disk drive or something like that?
You know what, honestly, I don't remember, but we could look it up. And also, too, just so everyone knows, in terms of the Wii for best-selling games, Wii Sports is a pack-in, so if you want to include that, all the numbers, excluding Japan for some reason, it sold 82.79 million units.
Wow.
And the best-selling non-bundled game, it's not really a surprise, Mario Kart Wii, 36.83 million units.
Wow. That's real. That to me, that's really fascinating because the non-bundled game, it sold twice as much as Grand Theft Auto 5 for Xbox. That's
a good point. Yeah,
which means that the Wii, they sold more titles, more copies of that title, Mario Kart Wii, than there were. Well, yeah. Never mind. I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah. No.
Well, here. Oh, go ahead, and then I'll go ahead and give you guys the total units sold for the consoles themselves.
Yeah. No. 15. You got 15 and 17 million for Grand Theft Auto 5 for both the 360 and the PS3. I mean, even that number combined together, that's not gonna. It just almost meets up with the 36 million for Mario Kart Wii. That's an incredible figure.
Well, one thing you can take away from it is to say that one way to spin it positively, I guess, is to say that the 360 and PS3 had a larger library of wider variety of games than the Wii, and
True.
so the purchases were spread out more over the titles rather than the Wii had a few very good titles that sold a lot more.
No, that's a very, very interesting way of putting it. Yeah, I think that may be very accurate.
Well, another thing too is the Xbox 360, like we said, had such an amazing start and a ton of great games, but unfortunately, the management direction and to be honest, I think a lot of this was Don Matrick. It went in my opinion, the completely backwards. Just I completely disagree with it. He wanted the focus on Kinect and casual, and I think that really hurt them. And he's the one who also wanted the Kinect bundled in with the Xbox One. He's the one who wanted it online all the time. I completely disagreed with his outlook, and because of that, wait till you hear what happened. And if you can believe this, of the 270,560,000 consoles sold during this generation, obviously Wii was in first with 101.63 million, then the 360 with 84.4 million, and the PS3 really caught up at the end because it sold 80 million. It was just barely behind the 360 by the end.
Wow. I didn't know Wii was ahead of 360.
Yeah, well, I kind of knew it was, but I still, when I said 360 was the PS2, because it's kind of, this is where Nintendo really just went into its own category, because, they really went hardcore with the GameCube, and guys like us loved that, but unfortunately, it wasn't really commercially viable for them. This is when they said, okay, we're just going to form our own little niche, not little, but, the casual crowd. They swung for the fences, and they got it, but, it's kind of like, your grandmother's not going to buy a 360 or a PS3, but she might buy a Wii, so it's that kind of thing.
They went for a much broader audience.
Yeah, I mean, even the advertising denoted that too, because you have, the old people playing it and stuff. No offense, mom and dad, but but no, yeah, it's no, they saw potential in the casual gamer market and went for it like no one's business. And
And then what's funny is Microsoft and Sony made the mistake of trying to capture that. Remember the PS3 had that weird motion stick thing with the balloon on top?
Oh, the move.
360 had Kinect, and it went nowhere.
Yeah, I remember.
It's kind of unfortunate because it was going to be like the next pathway into light gun games post CRTs, but it just never really went anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the other problem was too. I'm glad you brought up light guns. Is I think Time Crisis 4. It was kind of a cool idea. I mean, I actually had the light guns. You kind of had a control stick. It was kind of like holding like an MP40 with the side kind of sticking out, and you had that light gun game. But you had to set up like these infrared things up on top of the TV. It was a whole a whole production, but. It just didn't work out. But you could still use it, too, with a competitor's game, because House of the Dead 5, I think it was downloadable on PS3, and you could use the same light guns from Time Crisis 4 with that. So that was a nice thing, too, that you could play both.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think... I really think that the Wii... it definitely introduced a gaming gimmick. And a lot of people jump on the bandwagon, which eerily reminds me of the Atari 2600 with E.T. and Pac-Man and all that shovelware and stuff. Because you look at the library for the Wii and it's just titles upon titles upon titles of stuff that very few people are going to play.
Even the DS was like that too.
Yeah. And
what was that game everyone always talks about? Crungy Spingus and the Mungie Spungus, or
what?
whatever that game was called. Wait, let me see if I can find.
Oh my god, if that's the real title, I'm gonna be like.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out. Wait,
Scrimmy,
what is this?
Scrimmy Bingus and the Crungy Spingus.
What the? Yeah, that's a great band name.
It's like it was a DS title.
Wow.
Oh my god. That's funny.
Well, let me find the cover art.
Yeah, I need to see this.
Yeah,
Sorry to our viewing audience that can't see the cover art, but
well, look it up. That's we'll have to do a YouTube version.
Here, I'm gonna put it in Skype so you guys can see it at least.
All right, cool.
That's not real.
Oh, it was a 3DS game. Okay.
I love the kid on it. I love the kid. Like, wow.
That's not real.
I hope it is. I'm buying it tonight.
That's not real because there's no license by Nintendo logo.
I want that game. I have to have that game.
There's this one too. There's a here's a because for some reason that was this 3DS, but then there's this one that's it's actually in a DS box.
No, you know what this reminds me of? What's the name of Hideo Kojima's game?
Norman Reedus.
Yeah, Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus.
Again, great band name. We're kind of a post-punk band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I was thinking too. What was interesting about this generation was how you had a lot of games that were initially exclusives or were supposed to be exclusives, and then they went multi-platform. I think obviously the biggest was Assassin's Creed. That was supposed to be a PS3 exclusive.
Huh.
Oh really?
So
I played it on 360.
I understood, but it was initially announced as a PS3 exclusive. Is what I'm saying. And another example was like Fatal Inertia, which was this racing game I was really looking forward to. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be what I thought it would be, but that's another one. Obviously, Metal Gear Solid 4. That one,
yeah.
I think eventually that you got Phantom Pain or whatever on the 360, but it's just interesting.
Yeah.
There were very few exclusives that still happen. One that a great series, which is kind of a spiritual successor to Shenmue, which was exclusive to the PlayStation, which I loved. I even got the games from Japan because they'd always come out in America later. The Yakuza series, like Yakuza 3.
Yeah. Yeah, that's in the series I've been wanting to play too.
And I think Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection, at least the online version, remained exclusive as well to PS3. I remember downloading that. Oh, and I thought of another one. Demon's Souls, I think, was exclusive to PS3, but once they turned it to Dark Souls, that's when it became multi-platform.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I picked up Demon's Souls much... I think it was like after Dark Souls 2 came out, I finally picked up Demon's Souls.
From Software?
Yeah. from Software.
I like saying that.
Mr. Stutter. But yeah, I got it for like $6 or $7 on Amazon as like a downloadable thing.
You know, no, you guys are big racing fans like me. Did you guys play? It was a PS3 launch title, and I thought it was probably, well, to this day, I think it's probably the best recreation of a Formula One game. Formula One Championship Edition.
No.
That was a lot of fun.
I did play some. I think it was on PS2. I played some Formula One game on PS2, and I regretted it because I don't know. I kind of find Formula One type games boring myself, but.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then.
No, if you wanted to talk about it, go ahead.
No. I mean, it was just, to me, it was, the graphics were way ahead of their time because this came out, I think, March 2007 here in the U.S., and it was just, to me, it was just amazing how it looked. It handled great when you used it with the racing wheel. I really loved it a lot. I mean, it was, to me, it was Gran Turismo, but for F1. It was that realistic. Yeah, and it was a Sony exclusive, so.
I think I do remember that game, yeah. Because I remember playing some Formula One game and being really impressed with the graphics. But, I mean, that said, games like that, and along with fighting games and whatnot, I mean, racing games typically have really, really freaking good graphics because there's not a whole lot going on. I mean, you've got a few cars, you've got a track, you've got some bystanders that are probably like one polygon. So there's not a whole lot of stuff, so they can make the graphics really good. They can really utilize the horsepower of the hardware.
Trying to think too of other games that really define this generation, but before we get into those, I wanted to talk about a game that probably disappointed a lot of us. When I had to get a 360 at launch. I was so excited. I was dumb though, and I got the Core edition, but it was fine because I needed to get one with HDMI later on because of 3 red lights and everything. But I got 2 games at launch. I got Call of Duty 2, which was an incredible decision because I love that game. That's still probably the best World War II game I've ever played. It's Medal of Honor Allied Assault comes close. It's a tough choice, but I really think it's Call of Duty 2 that takes the cake. But the other game I got was Perfect Dark Zero.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened. I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
And it even got a 9 out of 10 from GameSpot.
Really?
I don't know why though. Yeah,
I was thinking it was
generally
widely
agree
panned.
with Greg Cassavin.
I was thinking it was widely panned.
I think Greg Cassavin, who, like I said, I generally agree with him a lot because he's a big fan of the Thief and Hitman series, which I love. I think he gave it a 9 out of 10.
Huh.
And I remember thinking, well, if he thinks so, then I fell for that, I guess. But I just was like, what? No, this isn't Perfect Dark. I don't know what it is, but it was okay because Call of Duty 2 more than made up for it. I mean, if you wanted me to pay $100 or $120 for Call of Duty 2, I would have gladly done that.
Just really quick here, just looking at on Wikipedia again, and a lot of people, it was divided, but yeah, a lot of people gave it favorable reviews. Which is really interesting, like 7 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s. IGN gave it an 8.4 out of 10.
That is really interesting, because I could have sworn...
Metacritic, what? The Metacritic gave it an 81 out of 100. Which is...
See, I just don't understand that, because, I mean, I love the original, but that one just... I don't know, it just wasn't that good. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, I don't know what exact, because I actually replayed it recently. I was at a friend's house and they had it, and I was like waiting around for something, I forget what, and I was like, oh yeah, I haven't played this game in a long time. And I played like the first mission, and then I turned it off. I was like, this doesn't feel. Yeah, it felt weird. I don't know. It felt like they were trying to stick
to be fair, it wasn't terrible, but yeah, it just was weird.
Yeah, it felt like they were trying to keep some features of the that would have worked well on the N64, but they were doing it in a dual stick game. And yeah, I don't know. I still do kind of like that game. Like, I want to like it. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, let me ask you guys this. In 2007, when both Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4 came out, which one did you play more? I played them both a lot, especially because I bought Crackdown, which we'll have to talk about as well.
Oh,
Great
yeah.
open world game. So I got to do the multiplayer beta. But which of those did you guys play more once they actually came out?
I'd probably Halo 3, but I definitely really, I have a I liked Call of Duty 3 more than a lot of my friends at least did, because it was the first and last Call of Duty to have a class system in it and vehicles.
Yeah, I was going to say in vehicles. Yeah, that is that's when Treyarch first, tried their hand at it, and it wasn't as good as 2, but I liked it too. I know what you mean by most people hated it, but I liked it a lot. So I'm glad there's at least two of us.
Yeah, and I wanted to, because I played Call of Duty 2 online a lot and 4, and I wanted to play 3 online a lot more, but it was hard to find games. Yeah, it was hard to find games in it. It was really weird. I thought it was really good, and I guess no one else did. Because I remember playing it, and I still have vivid memories of the few matches I did play of it. I remember playing as a medic, and I remember like going into this house and like healing one of my teammates with the syringe. And there was like a tank outside on the bridge shooting at us in the building. It was like really intense moments like that. But then, before and after that, Call of Duty was just about running around on foot shooting people.
Yeah, I hear you. And for me, I think I played them even for the first holiday there, and because I really did love Halo 3. I loved the Forge mode, and I played it a ton. But I think probably by the summer of 2008. To me, it just Call of Duty took over. They really kind of, took the baton from them. Because after that, I played Call of Duty a lot more than Halo, because it just never reached that peak again.
Yeah. Well, and I switched to Call of Duty 4 mostly because a lot of my friends in high school had it, so I remember playing it a lot with them.
Yeah, you're right. It took over. It became the new de facto title that everyone went to. So,
yeah, Max, what were you gonna say? There's a couple times you were.
Yeah, sorry about that.
What? No, there's a couple times where I heard you start to say something. And then...
Yeah, no, I actually I'm in the minority of people where I didn't play either title. If I were okay, fine. No, but if I were given a choice, I would take the Halo 3 because I'm just the fact that I just lean more sci-fi. That being said, there are the World War II games are a lot of fun. Like I love Frontline, Medal of Honor Frontline on GameCube.
Oh, that's another great one.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this though, Max. If you didn't play Call of Duty 4 or Halo 3 in Holiday 07, what were you playing?
Holiday 07. Jeez. Well, let me go back in the archives in my brain here.
Well, I'm guessing it's Orange Box or Mass Effect.
Yeah, Orange Box. Or
BioShock even, I guess, could be.
BioShock, well, no, actually... BioShock and Orange Box, specifically TF2.
Because Max, I remember when I met you in 2010.
Yeah,
you were still really big into the TF2 scene, like the map making and stuff like that, especially.
Yeah, yeah, they're the maps were very whatchamacallit, the map making community. They're a bunch of very special people, and no, there's very a lot of lack of constructive criticism. It's just you make something and people just completely destroyed it. But I digress. But yeah, no, it was TF2 got a lot of life and
still getting a lot of life.
It has it. I thought I haven't checked in the fandom or maybe not the fandom is the right word to choose, but I haven't checked the scene in a while. But you would think Overwatch would have taken it over or something.
Valve is trying. They're trying to keep it alive at the very least. I know a lot of people do still play it.
Well, that's the other thing. Valve's really they didn't get Destiny 2. That's exclusive to Battle.net, so they're really starting to actually get some competition, which is a good thing, I think. But Valve's got to pick up and figure out how they're going to compete here.
Yeah, well, and of course there's titles that are exclusive to Origin also. So
yeah.
EA has taken some from them too.
Yeah. Well, remember the whole SimCity debacle in 2013? I was really looking forward to that, but that whole launch was just a disaster.
Yeah. What was the details of that? Because I remember it was something about it was like too simplified or something.
Well, it was too simplified, the game itself, but that's if you actually were able to play it. If you were like me, if you pre-ordered it, it said, no, we don't recognize your license key. And so I think for about a week, nobody could really play it, and that really hurt it as well. Well, I paid for it, but I couldn't play it.
I actually hadn't heard about that, but I just remembered also that it had I think that was the game that had the issue also if you had to be always online.
Well, that was the problem. That's why you couldn't play it, because the servers were just screwed up. It was set up to do that. Everybody was already ticked that you'd have to always be online, but then it didn't even work, and EA got so much flack for that.
Yeah.
And deservedly so, if I dare say. I just, I can't stand that. If I'm paying for a game, I should own it. That's why we're part of the DRM-free movement. I mean, I understand piracy's an issue, but why should the paying customer be the one to pay the price for that?
Well, and there's some things things are being phased in and phased out, but definitely a movement away from that is Denuvo is starting to go away. They just took it out of Mass Effect Andromeda. They just patched it out because Denuvo, which has been like the biggest anti-piracy thing, it's still being cracked. It takes a while sometimes, but the games still get cracked eventually. And in the meantime, the paying customers are having to go through performance issues because of the system
DRM.
in place and everything. Yeah, and it's just a mess.
Well, that's why it's good, that social media can be so loud sometimes, because the market now has the more of a voice. I mean, the market's always had a voice by, hey, people aren't buying this thing. But now people can say, I'm not buying it, and here's why. And I think that's helping, too. These companies can adapt if they're actually willing to listen. Like, for instance, Grand Theft Auto, Rockstar got in trouble recently because on GTA 5 they tried to shut down the modding community for the PC, and everybody was ticked. They're like, okay, we'll put some of it back. Okay, give us a break here.
Yeah. They just mainly wanted Open4, that tool that was for making single player mods. Didn't affect the online community really at all. But yeah, I was looking at the there was an article that mentioned it, and I went and looked it up and confirmed it. People, as like a backlash, people who had already reviewed the game changed their reviews, and new people were flooding in reviewing the game and all giving it negative thumbs down. Yeah, and it went. GTA 5 went from like mostly or overwhelmingly positive, one of the highest positive ratings, to overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah, well then you gotta respond.
Yeah.
You know, what's interesting, too, about this generation, going back to GTA a bit, GTA 4, that was a huge jump, obviously, from San Andreas, and it was just an incredible game, but what it also did is set a precedent, because I believe they moved the release of Iron Man the movie because of the game, because, it was now, Hollywood was going, uh-oh, we actually have to compete with these guys now.
Huh.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, GTA 4 had its own set of problems when it came to PC, because they decided to go with the horrible service. Whatever Microsoft was doing there was all bad, and they learned from it. Games for Windows Live, which was sort of like trying to give a 360 experience on PC, sort of, but it was just really bad.
Well, with the exception of one game where it's not too well known, you can pick it up for $5 or less, but I thought they did a really good job. Did you guys play Shadowrun?
Shadowrun.
Oh, no,
Does that sound familiar? Oh,
that was a lot of fun.
That was the first-person one, right? Not the new titles, not the new.
No. This was it was a unique thing. It was the first time they tried to reboot that franchise, and hardly anybody played it, but I played it a lot, and I had a ton of fun. That was a really underappreciated gem.
Right, it was a multiplayer game, right? It was first person. Yep. I do remember that.
And PC players could play 360. It was kind of like Unreal Tournament 3, which also tried to do that on PS3 as well.
Yeah, I do remember that game. I did play it a little bit. I don't think I ever played it online, because I think that was back before I got broadband. But,
well, you could play with bots, too.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember playing it.
You know, the other thing I wanted to bring up as well, I'm sorry to keep jumping around here. Max, I know you're a huge Metroid Prime fan, and obviously Retro Studios because of that.
Yep.
One of the games they brought out this generation was one of the best Wii games, in my opinion, Donkey Kong Country Returns.
Yes, and I believe it's running off of the same engine as Metroid Prime 3, which is also the same engine as Metroid Prime 1. So, like, you could essentially take all the assets from you could essentially take the assets from any of the games, with the exception the third engine is a bit more. Obviously, it's for Wii, so it definitely has a much bigger overhaul than the the first two games. So it's a bit more difficult, but in theory, you could take the assets from any of the games and swap them around and stuff with a little bit of editing. That being said, that's another phenomenal game, it's nice to know that Retro wasn't a one trick pony or anything like that. It's they actually had they could handle other IPs and stuff, and so that was really cool that they were able to tackle that.
Well, tell you what, I'm just trying to think of topics for us. What were each of your favorite games of this generation?
Well, oh boy.
Well, to go back on Metroid Prime 3, I had a lot of fun on. I will admit, it's definitely the weakest one of the trilogy. And admittedly, there's some whatchamacallit, like some gimmicky aspects with the controller, but I think it's it was one of the games that utilized the controller the best, unlike Red Steel and stuff like that, where Oh,
I kind of liked Red Steel. I'm sorry, I just want to throw that in there.
Red Steel was fun-ish, but it was it got very repetitive. Near the end, you're just like swing, parry, swing. But it was a good attempt by Ubisoft.
And the sequel was good too, but I really I like the original. And maybe it's the newness of the Wii at the time, since it was a launch title, but I just remember enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the
Scarface played well on the Wii too.
Never played Scarface.
Oh, that you got to try that out. But you're probably better off doing it on Xbox.
Gotcha. Let me see here.
Well, Cameron, what was yours?
I was trying to think, and I thought of it right as Max was finishing up. My favorite game for 360 and of this generation has to be Dead Rising, the first Dead Rising. That was a very highly anticipated game for me because I was really, of course, into Resident Evil, really into zombie stuff back then. And the graphics just looked amazing. The fact there was like over 100 zombies on screen at once. You saw, like, when you would see all the like preview screenshots and stuff, it just looked so cool. And then actually playing it, when it actually came out, it met all expectations. It was exactly what it was advertised to be. You get to kill, hundreds of zombies in a mall. It's a, parody of Dawn of the Dead, except an even deeper story, a very well written story. It started off, if you only ever played like the first couple of hours of the game, you're like, okay, this is kind of cheesy and silly. But when you get further into the game, the story gets pretty serious and it gets pretty crazy. There was a lot of variety. I mean, you eventually go outside the mall, and there's more stuff that happens. It was really, really an amazing title, graphically and story-wise and gameplay-wise. Although there's some issues with the gameplay, but sometimes a little bit, especially the shooting was a little bit clunky. But for the most part, it was an incredible title for 2006 for a very early
Absolutely.
Xbox 360 game.
I just remembered, my favorite title of all time is Duke Nukem. For not just kidding. No disrespect for Scott Miller, but in all seriousness, the BioShock 1 and 2, phenomenal games. I really thought 2 was kind of an underrated sequel. Story-wise, it was weak. I give it that. But I thought the graphics were greatly improved, and I liked as fun as the water pipe game was, where you hack to try to open up the stuff, and you had to connect the point A to point B with the water pipe and stuff. In the first game, sometimes that did take just a little too long. So I liked how in the second game they just had that meter you kind of had to hit in between. It was kind of it did speed up the gameplay immensely, but it also it did kind of take away that puzzle aspect. But so it was kind of a good and bad thing. But overall, I did enjoy 2 just as much as 1. I didn't play it too much, but one of the launch titles for PS3, Motocross, I did enjoy.
Oh, the MotorStorm, I think is what you mean.
MotorStorm, that's it. Yeah.
I love that. That was beautiful. I remember the graphics at the time just blew me away.
Yeah, that was
a cool game.
That was a great launch title, and
I was thinking of one too. It's not technically a launch title because it came out in 2006, but Gears of War was pretty impressive when it came out. I remember loving that.
Yeah, that was another game I played a lot online with friends.
Yeah, that was.
Gears of War was great.
I'm trying to remember what other titles. Go on.
I was just thinking of some more myself. I really liked when you brought up Duke Nukem. It reminded me there were some great downloadable titles. The remasters of Duke Nukem 3D and Manhattan Project. were great.
Absolutely.
I love playing those.
Didn't get to play those.
Oh, you can still download them. So hurry on your 360. Those are great.
Well, my 360 is back at home with my parents, so all the way across the country.
I'll crash into your parents' place. Like, I'm gonna download this game.
Yeah, I'll send it like the raincoats. Little Seinfeld reference there.
Oh, dang it.
Well,
go ahead. And then I got 2 other titles I just wanted to run through.
Oh, go ahead. You're probably going to mention it.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say another great World War II action title on the Xbox Live was Battlefield 1943. That was a ton of fun. Another great multiplayer game that might have been overlooked because of Call of Duty. Well, maybe it's the next one. On PS3, this was a very guilty pleasure because it's simplistic, yet it was so fun, and I just kept playing it over and over again. Pain.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, that was
you could launch like I love Andy Dick. You had an Andy Dick character. You could have David Hasselhoff, whoever you wanted, and the main character. You fling them at buildings with a slingshot, and the whole point is to cause as much damage to this city as possible by shooting people into it.
Well, I'm surprised, Jordan. You haven't mentioned the rock legend that is Brutal Legend.
Ah, yes, with Jack Black. That's the guys who did Double Fine. The guys who did Psychonauts.
Yep. Yeah, that's. I remember my brother playing that.
I haven't played. I've only played the demo of Brutal Legend, so I only played like the first part. But from what I understand, when it gets into there's like RTS elements later in the game. Supposedly that is a pretty close gameplay. It's pretty close in gameplay to what I was describing earlier with Kingdom Under Fire. Supposedly, like you're like managing your troops, and then like when you go into battle, then you play as the main character again, and you're like hack and slashing.
Oh, so kind of like the Overlord series, which was great this generation from Codemasters.
Yeah, that was another series I always wanted to play, and I never got to.
Well, if you'd like to, both Overlord and Overlord 2 are on Zoom platform. In fact, Overlord 2 is DRM free, not available on GOG. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Well, I will have to look into
that. Oh boy. But yeah, go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you go ahead. I just keep thinking of stuff. You go ahead, and then I'll throw in a few other titles for you guys.
I'm still trying to jog my memory. You go right ahead.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say, Jordan did not say the game I thought he was going to say, which I'm surprised because this is a game we've talked about already, was the amazing, impeccable HD remaster of Perfect Dark on 360 Arcade, Xbox Live Arcade.
I should have said that. Plus, obviously, the leaked footage of the GoldenEye remaster that would have been just as cool. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The Perfect Dark remaster. I think they had Banjo Kazooie or Banjo Tooie. Rare did some great remasters. But you're right. Yeah. The Perfect Dark one was probably the best.
Yeah, it was so great seeing that game in better resolution, better models and textures and everything. 60 frames per second. And dual stick controls, that's the definitive version of the game to me. But unfortunately, at least you can still play it with split screen. But
it's on the
servers went down.
Well, you can still play it though, and I think online too with Rare Replay, but on Xbox One.
Oh,
it's only $20, but you get all like Banjo Kazooie, Banjo Tooie, like all the way back. I think there's like 25 games on it. That is really cool. The Rare Replay.
Oh, of course. I can't believe.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, really quick. Our buddy Lance Boyle, wow. Christian Eriksen's in it as one of the best bad guys in any video game, Heavy Rain.
Ah, yeah, Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
The doc.
Oh my god. I have Heavy Rain and I still haven't played it yet. It's still in the shrink wrap.
Oh wow.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Christian because one of my favorite series, especially in this generation, the 360 port of Hitman Blood Money, probably might be my favorite Hitman game of all time. About a year later, the Hitman movie comes out, and Christian Eriksen is the general in the movie.
That's right. Yeah. And I think it's his voice, but like I think they had to do ADR or something because it's like when he talks, it doesn't look like it's syncing up. It's almost like I'm watching a dubbed movie, but I think it's Christian doing it. We'll have to ask him, but
definitely.
But I remember watching that movie on cable TV just so I could see Christian. So,
well, it was funny. I was flipping through channels the other day, and there's this movie from '98 on The Man with the Iron Mask with John Malkovich, and he's talking, and then all of a sudden, Christian Eriksen walks up right behind him, and he's like, "Should we really do this?" He's like his number 2 guy. I was like, "Oh my god, that's Christian Eriksen!" It's called The Man with the Iron Mask, and it was so cool to see him and John Malkovich. That was like, wow.
Yeah, I it's funny because we look through really quick. like we go through his IMDb and stuff. He's like he's been in all these movies, but it's like you kind of have to kind of keep your eyes peeled because you can blink and miss him. But it's he's got
like the original Fun with Dick and Jane. That's his first role.
I've been trying to watch it, see if I could find him in there, but I haven't had.
It's right near the beginning. He's like in it for like I want to say like 30 seconds, but he's there.
Okay, cool. I'll keep my eyes peeled. But I realized that the other game that I really like a lot. I'm actually confusing it with it's actually on PS4, but yeah, no, I realized just now like a lot of the games that I haven't really played a lot of games on. This is when I was going through college and stuff, so this was the start of me not really playing a lot of games anymore because I was
working.
Unbelievably busy. So
I hear you. Oh, but I really enjoyed Batman Arkham Asylum, and I thought that was incredible. But then once Arkham City came out, to me, that was... I mean, next to, say, Spider-Man on the N64, Dreamcast, that era, I'd say Batman Arkham City is probably one of the best superhero games of all time. What do you guys think of that series?
Yeah, I never played Asylum, but only recently I played City. And it was very good. I definitely really like that. I think that's it's a really good representation of Batman. I don't know how else to say that, but I like that world of Batman in the Arkham games.
I hear you, because it's kind of like like the Spider-Man game was saying, or the first Spider-Man movie game, or maybe even Batman Vengeance. They just get the feel right.
Yeah.
That vibe, because I prefer it when it's more cartoony. I prefer that as opposed. But even like I said, the first movie one, it still had that cartoon feel. It wasn't too much like the movies. To me, I got burned out on superhero movies pretty quickly.
Yeah, same here.
I think anyone with a spinal column has, so.
Or an IQ over 50.
Yeah. Okay, you can write your angry letters to podcast, and that's...
Yeah, we probably just alienated everybody, but whatever.
It's our opinion, you deal with it.
Those elitists.
Oh, and there was another game I thought of when you brought up Arkham. Now, I will say that I personally don't care for... I mean, talk about something that's being overdone. I personally don't care for the direction that the whole Arkham's Creed, Far Cry... those kinds of games are going now. How we have so many of those games now, just like collectathon.
You mean you don't like sitting on the bench listening to conversations?
Well, just these so many games, especially from Ubisoft, like with Watch Dogs, Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, that are like all it is now. They spend so much time crafting this beautiful open world, but then they just give you a bunch of fetch quests that are kind of boring and inconsequential, and the stories often aren't very well written. I mean, that's subjective, but...
No, exactly, though. I mean, and it's pseudo-stealth. It's not like, say, Thief or Hitman. I mean, to me, like, the later Splinter Cell games and later Assassin's Creeds, because the first one didn't do it too much, but it's less about stealth, and it's more about just, like you said, fetch quests.
Yeah.
Although Dishonored, that was a unique take on the stealth genre from this generation. Did you guys like Dishonored?
I've only played the second one, and that's because, and I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I tested it on Xbox One.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah, so I've only played the second one, but yeah, that is, once again, another series that I have been meaning to play.
Well, Cameron, you probably have a unique perspective on this generation because of that. I mean, with what you are allowed to say, I mean, could you elaborate?
Well, the not 7th generation, but it would have been 8th generation.
Oh, okay. Well, the next podcast, then, if you don't mind, we'd love to tap that knowledge base there.
Yeah.
L.A. Noire is another game that comes to mind.
Yeah. L.A. Noire. And Red Dead Redemption.
Boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom.
This is a stupid inside
Did you guys
joke.
play Red Dead Revolver? Because that was really underrated. That and Gun.
Yeah.
And then Red Dead Redemption took it to a whole other level. I love those Western games.
Yeah, I'd always wanted to play Gun, and Red Dead Revolver I did play. Red Dead Revolver was a weird game. Because it like the mission structure was set up really strange. Because it wasn't quite open world. You just sort of like went from mission to mission. But I remember it had some interesting things. I specifically remember, I still remember the boss fight where there's like a guy with a minigun or something. Like one of those old-fashioned crank miniguns.
Oh, yeah. It just kept... It never stops.
Gatling gun. Gatling gun,
gun,
they would have called it, yeah.
And I was going to say, too, the split-screen multiplayer in that game was a lot of fun.
I can't remember if I ever tried that or not.
Oh, that was a blast. It really was. It was very quick, but you could just do... It was one of those games where you just kept playing and playing and playing, and you realize, whoa, 3 hours went by.
Yeah, I guess they were just like duels, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. And it was a real small map, but you had to aim real quickly. It was very Twitch.
Let's see here.
This is funny. I just started thinking of some more games, interesting games we forgot to mention from the 6th generation. There's Killzone. That series started on PS2. Beautiful game for PS2. I still really love the gritty sci-fi atmosphere in that game.
What was their Halo killer?
Yeah, it had really nice color grading, like muted colors, and it had a nice film grain to it. And then also another game I remembered on Xbox, original Xbox, that was very different for the time was the experimental first-person game Breakdown. You guys remember that?
No. Tell us about it. Max, how about you?
No, I haven't.
I believe it was Namco? Let me look it up. Breakdown. Xbox. Yeah, it was Namco. And I played through it a couple years ago when this guy and I were trying to do like a YouTube series thing for his website, and we were trying to play like obscure games, and he picked Breakdown as one of them, and we played through the whole game. And yeah, it was basically Mirror's Edge before Mirror's Edge, except it wasn't about parkour. It was just it was a first-person melee action game. There was some shooting too, like there was definitely guns also, but it was mostly about melee fighting in first person, and it was pretty interesting. It was a little bit clunky, but. And it definitely had some Japanese... It definitely looked like a Japanese game. Like, it had that sort of... Lots of, like, very industrial areas you would go through, and it had... yeah, I don't know. But it was interesting. It was one of those titles that... on 360... It would have been like a $20 or $30 title. It would have been like one of those
I have an example of I think what you're talking about. Earth Defense Force 2017.
Yeah.
Which is a great one.
Yeah. And actually let's go into that. Let's talk about cuz I think there's something I've only discovered in the past couple of years, the Xbox 360 particularly, though it might have also been on PS3, but I think it was mostly 360. There was a lot of games on 360 that like nobody's ever heard of. There's a lot of games that are whether they're good or bad, especially Japanese titles, that you had like Onichambara, the zombie hack and slash game with the girls in bikinis.
Interesting.
And that was another game that guy and I played. It was bizarre. And you had Bullet Witch also, which was about like a modern day witch basically with a gigantic gun. And you had to fight off. You had to like work with the like U.S. military or something to fight off this basically like hell was coming to Earth kind of thing. I remember that game vividly because it was the kind of game that you play it once and then you're done with it. But I had rented it from Blockbuster and I was sick, and so I think I like missed a couple days of school or something. I was like really sick, like I had like a fever, and you know when you're like when you have a fever, especially everything's like much more vivid. And so I played, because that was the only game I had rented from Blockbuster for that weekend. I normally wouldn't have played a lot of it, but I played a lot more of it than that I would have because I was sick. And I ended up actually, I think that was the first game that I got 1,000, all 1,000 gamer score in on the achievements.
Haha, nice.
Got all the achievements for it.
You know, there's a game I played when I was sick. This was probably, the 6th generation, but it's another game that not too many people know about, unfortunately. Did you guys play Second Sight?
Yeah, well, no, I didn't play it, but I do remember that.
Yeah, that was a very, very cool game. Another one that just, for a lot of people, just slid under the radar. I was trying to think of others that kind of did that same thing you were talking about.
I think similar to Second Sight was also in 6th generation was Psyops. That was another overlooked game.
Project Snowblind was kind of similar to that, or the Red Faction games.
Yeah, yeah. It was like that. It was like that weird like subset of like mind games of games where you had like telekinetic powers and stuff, but they didn't do all that well.
Well, I was going to say, that reminded me, of course, of Giant Citizen Kabuto and the MDK games. Those are other ones that kind of slid under the radar.
Yeah.
With that kind of gameplay. Yeah,
those are, again, other games that I've heard about and wanted to play, and I don't know a lot about them, but there are names I keep hearing.
They're both Interplay titles. I was trying to think. Fallout 3, speaking of Interplay, of course, that eventually was Bethesda. But yeah, if you guys want to do Fallout 3.
Yeah, Fallout 3.
Doesn't Fallout 3 have the Blade Runner blaster in it?
No, that's New Vegas.
That's New Vegas? Okay.
Yeah. Which was another
Bayonetta
title. Oh yeah, Bayonetta.
Bayonetta, that was
another game. Another game I only played the demo for.
You know, we're missing a big one too. We're actually missing 2 really big games from this era. Can you guys guess which ones I'm thinking of here?
Lollipop Chainsaw.
Oh, look. That's a good one. Why don't you talk about that one, and then I'll throw in the 2 I'm thinking of.
No, I haven't played Lollipop Chainsaw.
Well, here's what I was thinking of. First off, the Portal series.
Oh yeah! Wow.
Oh my god! How the hell did we forgot that?
Well, guess what? The next one wait till you hear what we also forgot, because I got something even easier. That. How could we forget this? Super Mario Galaxy.
I'm just gonna sit in the corner here, just like Portal was amazing. Portal was, again, Valve doing what it does best, and it's almost felt like reinventing the genre.
Go ahead. I had a thought on Portal though.
Yeah, no, I the one thing that really annoyed me in Tron 2.0, which it's a first person game just like Portal, but platforming was very difficult. You jump and it would be a very short jump, and you would fail it and die and whatever. And with Portal, that just completely threw that concept out the window, and the fact that you can fling around and get these massive distances and stuff, and then also, of course, the portal aspect with, that in itself is really fascinating how that works too. And
but who did it first?
Oh,
that's what I was going to say.
Oh, yeah. Well, they hired DigiPen. Didn't they hire all the people from?
Well, no. Who did the Portal concept first? You guys know?
It was the I can't remember the name of the game, but it was made by. Wasn't it a bunch of kids in a college, like DigiPen College or something like that?
No. That's not what Jordan was talking about. He's talking about another.
Oh, Cameron, I'll let you do it. I bet Cameron knows.
I don't know.
Okay, it was Human Head Studios. It took 11 years to make, and it was produced by 3D Realms. No, Prey. The original Prey.
Oh, right.
Did Portals first. That's this generation.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like on a completely another thing there.
No worries, no. But we're all thinking different things. That's what's so great about this. We're just kind of the neurons are firing, and we're just throwing out titles. But yeah, I just was remembering. I forgot that came first. So technically, the Portals came from that first. So
gotcha.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, Portal was fantastic, and then when they. I mean, what a hell of a sequel Portal 2 was. I mean, God, that is how you do a sequel. They just really knocked it out of the park. Like traversing through, like Portal was all about like these really like white, clean environments and everything, very sterilized. And then Portal 2, you had this dirty, like abandoned facilities and really great witty writing, great voice acting, great animations. Just really, it was great. I miss Valve. Valve, please do
the Left 4
again.
Dead series as well. That was another great thing they did.
Yeah. So Left 4 Dead, that was another game that I was really looking forward to because I thought it was going to be the next Resident Evil Outbreak, and it was not. I mean, all the beta footage they showed, like, God, I was keeping up with all that. I would spend hours just looking at videos of the game, like picking it apart and looking at, like, reading people's impressions and things. And I was like, oh, I can't wait for this. This is going to be more tactical, team-based, like strategizing about how to survive these situations and different scenarios. And then when it actually came out, it was different. Left 4 Dead is still a great game. Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 are both still great games, but they are not at all what I had hoped they would be.
Another series, just thinking where, again, you could kind of make your own experience, something like that. Wanted to bring up, did you guys play Little Big Planet?
No.
I've seen a lot of gameplay for it, but I never actually played it.
Yeah, same.
I played it a little, not too much, but I really like the concept of being able to create your own games. I just wanted to make sure we mentioned that because that was another unique thing for this generation. You got some more titles like that.
Yeah, and Sackboy, became something of a new mascot.
Yeah.
And speaking of mascots, not to, again, jump around here, but while I didn't enjoy Smash Brothers Brawl that much, it was the first time you had Solid Snake and Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when the news of that popped out, came out, and I remember just people were going insane. That it was like the long thought barrier of third party companies. Well, I'm sorry, not third party companies.
Well, even just one of those would have been a big deal, but to get them both.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like it's just Sonic and Mario. I mean, it's just that was like everyone's dream back in the Genesis Super NES days, and
Well, those Olympics games, they did a great job too. Mario and Sonic. That was actually kind of neat, kind of like Wii Sports and the bowling, where they had them together.
Yeah, that was a really cool concept. And but yeah, that's definitely, to me, that was definitely the selling point of Brawl, was having Snake and Sonic in there. Sonic.
Now, hopefully, you guys won't laugh at me here, but I kind of liked initially when I had the Wii, Rayman Raving Rabbids. I like those games. No, go ahead.
I remember playing that. That was a fun game. There was some good mini games in there. I liked how the one maze game it was like in the rabbit's brain or whatever. You would just hear like the rabbit voiceover guy just going, singing Christmas tunes and stuff. So it was like, that always cracked me up. Those are how about Rabbids is still ongoing, and now Mario's in on it and stuff. This last E3,
it's crazy.
Absolutely, it's almost like the predecessor to those freaking Minion things.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
Oh, and I keep bringing up Wii games because I think some of those are underappreciated, like the new Super Mario Brothers series, where they brought, kind of like Duke Nukem Manhattan Project that we mentioned earlier, we're bringing back 2D but with a 3D art style.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Super Mario new Super Mario Brothers. Those are a lot of fun. They nice focus back to the original platforming and stuff, and you gotta love the music too, and that's the one thing I think that's really what's so great about Nintendo, is that their musicians really do know like how to write good music that everyone can really enjoy, for the most part. At least in terms of the Mario franchise, obviously you're not gonna. There's very few tracks from the Metroid series. You're like, oh, I'm going to listen to this while I'm relaxing. I'm going to listen to the boss music for Mother Brain here.
But the music still worked for the game really well. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like you can't listen to it on its own.
No, absolutely. Well, and that's the really fascinating thing too, is that some of the music, especially in the early days, like for the Super NES and NES, is super minimalistic. Like in the Metroid games and stuff, and out of context, without the boss fight, if you're just listening to the music on its own, you're like, it's okay. But with the graphics and with the gameplay and the suspense and the monster trying to kill you, you're really the context is key, and the songs really increase the tension and the mood of the game. It's it's very. I think a lot of people underestimate the power of sound, much like they do in movies. They George Lucas said, sound is 50% of the picture, and that's very true even for video games as well. And
that's why I have so many iconic soundtracks, because take GoldenEye for example, movie and game. Eric Serra, and it's iconic. Like you're like, oh, that's GoldenEye, or that's whatever the movie is. Whether it's music created just for a movie, but on the flip side, you've also got like the Stones' Monkey Man. Whenever you hear that, you probably think of Goodfellas, because it was used so well in that movie.
Yeah,
so sometimes you'll have stuff like that as well.
Well, what's also funny is in terms of like stuff like SpongeBob, for example, you'll have library music, and so you'll have instances where like you'll watch an episode of SpongeBob, like, I've heard that song before, and it's like, turns out that song was used like 40 years earlier in an episode of Monty Python Flying Circus, and
wow,
there's stuff like that, and
or we used it on Storytime with Bubby.
Oh God, why did you bring that up? No, don't bring it up. No,
Well, something we should bring up. This is the only podcast that'll go from Goodfellas to SpongeBob.
There we go.
Same topic.
That's our commercial
Within
right there.
seconds.
Yeah.
Zoom platform, the only podcast.
A game I wanted to mention, since we were talking about Smash Brothers, was so you guys remember when Sony tried to do their own Smash Brothers?
Yeah, I was going to mention
All
that.
Stars Battle Royale.
Yeah.
Was that PS3?
Yeah.
I remember that and going, wow, this is such a rip-off.
Yeah.
And
and actually, Max, you and I played it. Remember at Isaiah's place?
That's right. I remember that.
And
it was actually pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. It was a little unbalanced, but it was pretty fun.
But it's kind of like all the copies that actually turn out okay, like Crash Bash to Mario Party. It's pretty good. Crash Team Racing. I mean, they're not as good as the originals, in my humble opinion, but they hold their own.
Yeah, I remember one thing I liked about Battle Royale was I became like a one trick with Sweet Tooth, because he had, when you hit, I think it was when you hit square, one of his abilities was he would blast it with a shotgun, and it was like stupid powerful. Like you could like stun lock people with it and just like kill people with just the shotgun. It was ridiculous.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Twisted Metal, because you mentioned before, Cameron, Twisted Metal Black on PS2, which was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the PS3 version was pretty good too, I thought. What did you think, being a Twisted Metal guy?
Oh yeah, and I picked up Twisted Metal PS3 just a couple years ago, a year, maybe not even a couple. I think it was like right before I moved across the country. Because it was I think the original Twisted Metal was like one of the last games my dad and I played together, which is funny. It was like Twisted Metal 2 was like one of the first games we played together, and then one of the last games we played together is Twisted Metal PS3. But yeah, it was good. Wasn't great,
but it wasn't black. It wasn't black though.
Yeah, because I didn't like that they went for a more simplified approach where like there's only like a handful of characters rather than like this great diverse cast. I mean, when you think about it, like the original Twisted Metal games were a lot like Overwatch. Like, each character was really unique, had a unique design, unique vehicle, unique abilities, and you had this great cast of characters in every game. That were all stylized and everything, but then Twisted Metal PS3 was like, okay, we're gonna bring back like four classic characters from the original games, and we're gonna give them like their own new rebooted backstory, and they're gonna duke it out. And then there's also gonna be other people that show up too that you actually can't play as. And so, I mean,
I forgot about that.
The gameplay was still fun. It was still Twisted Metal. It was still fun. It just and it looked great on PS3, but it just didn't feel quite the same.
And that's unfortunate.
Black was definitely the best.
Yeah. And I remember Black. Awesome. They had the separate online disc that you could get. That was one of the first online PS2 games.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know we were kind of talking about spiritual successors and kind of games copying stuff, but there are two that I think we should probably bring up. I know we kind of touched on them earlier, but the Uncharted series, which is essentially Indiana Jones, but that was a good one. What'd you guys think of that?
Yeah, well, and also the people say that of course, Uncharted also borrowed from Tomb Raider. But then,
yeah, that's true.
But then the next Tomb Raider game was basically Uncharted. So
funny how that works.
Yeah, they just sort of took from each other, which I think is a lot of people find that annoying. I think it's funny, but I think it's kind of cool even. But
well, a series that changed. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish. And then I thought of a series that changed actually.
Talking about Uncharted, that was of course one of the reasons I finally bought a PS3. Because I got the PS3 really late in its life. I bought the the middle one, the one that was like slightly smaller, but it wasn't the final version of the PS3. The Slim, I think it was just called. And it came bundled with Uncharted 3, and then I bought 1 and 2 in the bundle, the double pack or whatever. And yeah, what a great trilogy those were. And I haven't played the fourth one yet, which I've heard is also good, but yeah, those first 3 were amazing. I mean, Naughty Dog really, after Crash, they really went on to do some great stuff. The Last of Us also was fantastic.
Jack and Daxter. Bernie discovered him. Bernie's who brought him to PlayStation. So I mean, yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah.
The Uncharted games are probably my favorite PlayStation exclusive games.
Yeah,
they're
I think many people would agree. Yeah,
yeah, they're really well done, very entertaining. It's Nolan North is the game industry's Bruce Campbell. The music's really great. All those it was. I remember. Well, I'm trying to remember. What was it? The third one where he's in the Himalayas.
Welcome to the Himalayas.
I think that might be the fourth one, but I could be wrong. Maybe it is the third one.
No, the second one. Actually,
second one, yeah. I remember.
Yeah,
okay,
where you start out on the crash train or whatever.
Right.
That's my blood.
That's a lot of blood.
Yeah, we have more inside jokes from those games than I thought we did.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Well, here's my. Oh, go ahead.
Just really quick. I just like the Himalaya levels a lot, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say another series, the one that changed. Obviously, the middle game's similar, but what did you prefer, BioShock or BioShock Infinite?
I have to say BioShock Infinite was definitely fun. And normally I'm okay with stories, abstract stories like what Infinite was telling. And I was engaged in everything, but that wasn't I wasn't expecting that. And if I knew beforehand that the game was going to be that avant-garde with its story, I think I would have appreciated it more. Maybe if I replay it again, I'll like it more.
Oh yeah, I recommend you do, because I replayed it like a few months after I played it the first time, and I definitely appreciated it a lot more.
Gotcha. Yeah, because it was a lot of fun, and I just wasn't probably in the right mindset when I played it, but I could appreciate it for what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, Infinite. Well, first of all, for my opinion, the original BioShock. I haven't played BioShock 2, unfortunately, and I really should, because I do keep hearing good things about it. But the original BioShock, of course, had the fantastic. It was the KOTOR of its generation, with the twist at the end. And Would You Kindly? What a great twist! It was really, really good. But and the gameplay was great. I mean, great environments and everything. Great enemies, bosses. Definitely a worthy spiritual successor to System Shock.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then Infinite. I liked Infinite more than a lot of people did. And what was interesting was that I liked, even on my first playthrough, I liked the story better than a lot of people did. But and I just remember like the hours I spent like looking up fan theories of the meaning behind it all and everything, and people like putting everything together and connecting everything, but the gameplay of Infinite I did not enjoy on my first playthrough, because I played it on hard mode, and interestingly, again, in my opinion, that's a game that, because of the way the game design, the combat design is, it really feels like a game that is meant to be played on the easiest difficulty. Because if you're really good at first-person shooters, then you'd probably have fun in any difficulty. But when I replayed it, I played it on easy, and it felt a lot better because it felt like you felt like a god. It was like it was really, I don't know. It was much more enjoyable on an easier difficulty. Even though, interestingly enough, the coveted what was it called, 1999 mode just made everything even harder than it needed to be, really.
You guys want to talk a little about handhelds next?
Yeah.
What we got?
Interesting handhelds in this generation.
I was going to say, too, did you guys play Archer McLean's Mercury on the PSP?
That sounds familiar. Mercury.
It was a really unique game, and they brought it to the Wii as well with a sequel, Mercury Meltdown, and De Blob kind of was similar to it as well, another great series.
I remember that cover, yeah.
But basically, you had to roll this Mercury around and go through these. It was a cool puzzle game, but you had to tilt how you were doing it, or move the thumbstick, which was unique about the PSP, obviously being the first handheld really with a thumbstick. But I just remembered enjoying that a lot, and obviously the GTA games and a Ridge Racer on the DS. What were some of your favorite portable games? I'm sure Twisted Metal Head-On's got to be one of them.
Well, yeah, Mercury sounds a little bit like Super Monkey Ball, which is another game we forgot to mention from the GameCube.
Oh, great Sega title, and the sequel too, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, the PSP was sort of my first like multimedia device, or portable multimedia device, like because it was before. Obviously before smartphones, so it was like when the first iPhone was coming out and everything. And I just remember being blown away that you could watch videos on this tiny screen and had like good resolution. You could play like console quality games, I did play Twisted Metal Head-On, and that was fun. I'm trying to remember. Oh, well, one game that I owned that is probably, I'd say it's probably my favorite PSP game was Hot Shots Golf Open Tee. That was a lot of fun because that was the Hot Shots Golf experience brought to PSP, and you played on portable, and it was a lot of fun.
Did you play the Wipeout games too? Those are great as well. Pure and Pulse.
I think so. I think I might have rented them. I didn't own them. I didn't own a lot of PSP games.
Same here, and same with the DS. Like I had Mario 64. You had kind of your staples, but I don't think anyone, or at least of the three of us, maybe bought much more than than like kind of a handful.
Yeah. Now, what I did do later with my PSP was I did a lot of research into hacking it to get the custom firmware on there so you could play PS1 games. And
nice.
So that's mostly what I did with my PSP. Like once I hacked it, oh man, I just played. That was like all I did was play PS1 games on it. It was awesome.
You know what was great on PSP? Did you guys play the Pursuit Force games? Yeah. That was a great one. I loved those.
Yeah, I remember enjoying that. Yeah. I again just rented it, but yeah, I remember enjoying that. PSP was interesting because it was like the first time, well, one of the first times we were bringing like console quality games, 3D games to handheld, but I always felt like, with the exception of a few titles, that the PSP games always felt kind of shallow. I mean, I guess it's to be expected because of the hardware, but like Twisted Metal Head-On, it never quite clicked with me. Like I had fun with it, but it wasn't like playing it. It wasn't like playing Twisted Metal Black or like playing Twisted Metal 2, like my two favorites in the series. Like it, and I think like a lot of the PSP games felt that way. Again, with the exception of games like Ridge Racer and Hot Shots Golf, like I really felt like they brought the console experience in those games. But other ones I felt like were a little more shallow.
Well, what was also unique about PSP is you had a lot of games that started off there and then went to consoles, Twisted Metal Head-On being one of them, and then the Liberty City stories and Vice City stories.
Right.
And I actually enjoyed those more on PS2. I mean, Head-On was a lot of fun, playing, I think, on console, two-player. PSP multiplayer was fun, but having it on the TV was more of a blast, in my opinion, too. I mean, that's what I thought was neat about that.
Yeah.
And the DS touchscreen worked a lot better than at least I expected. I don't know what you guys were thinking, but when you got that Metroid Prime Hunters demo, that worked really well. I mean, there were some really cool, unique uses for the game, and it didn't feel forced. Nintendogs is another great example of how they used it well.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, I just Metroid Prime Hunters. Yeah, that was. I never played the campaign. But I remember doing a lot of online multiplayer with that, and I played the one alien that had the sniper laser, and that was a lot of fun, despite the difficult control scheme. But managed to get a few kills in there.
How'd you guys feel about, obviously, you had the DS game cards with Game Boy Advance compatibility. I don't think you could use GBC games. And then, of course, with the PSP, it had the UMD.
Yeah, the UMD. What a wild format.
Yeah, really.
I remember it was like the Dreamcast. You could really hear the disc drive.
Yeah.
No matter how loud your headphones were, you could hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do remember that, yeah.
And I remember, too, like you were saying earlier, it was your first multimedia device, Cameron. I remember even putting some music on it, or I think you could even do it with the DS as well. Because I chose those before I eventually got an iPod. I mean, as much as I love music, I was like, well, I can just put music on those, not realizing, obviously how huge the hard drives were on the iPod.
Yeah. Yeah, and I spent a lot of money on I think it was 32 gigabytes. The memory card for the PSP, the Memory Stick Duo or whatever it was called.
I think it was Memory Stick Pro Duo, and they were expensive.
Yeah, they were so expensive. But I saved up and bought one, and I put a ton of music on there, and videos.
Did you ever get the cable to hook it to your TV?
No.
That was pretty neat. They eventually got rid of it, but with the later models, you could actually use it. Was like you used to be able to do the same thing with an iPod, but basically it looks like a giant headphone jack because there's actually 3 contact points instead of 2, and you could put in your RCA input into the TV.
Huh. Now, what I do remember was somebody made a program where you could plug your PSP in to your computer via USB, which was a feature already. But you could play PSP games. You could use the USB as a video out, and you could actually play PSP games on your computer monitor.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, I remember trying that a couple times. It lagged a lot. It wasn't really viable. It wasn't really playable, but it looked cool at least.
Well, it reminded me too. You had that PlayStation Remote Play where you could play the PSP game on the TV. You had that as well.
Yeah. Well, and then we can talk about an 8th generation where you were able to play PS4 games basically on your Vita.
True, yeah, and now even on your PC.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right.
That's just...
It's really amazing how everything's really converging. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is neat how... the lines continually being blurred. I just don't want us to come down to one device or one service, Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is that for the longest time, video game consoles were just that, video game consoles. They were very different architecturally and hardware-wise to... okay, maybe not architecturally, but they're definitely very different hardware-wise to the computers at the time until recently. Like right now, I have the Nintendo Switch teardown on iFixit's website pulled up here, and the interior of it is more or less the same components you find in a MacBook. You have a heat sink with the heat tubes and stuff, and a fan. So the technology is really starting to become identical with modern computing, and as a result, the devices are, like you said, are going to get blended. And it's up to companies
so will it blend?
Well, that is the question. But yeah, no,
I think that's too why we got the virtual console and more backwards compatibility, which I think is great because it's like music and movies. You got more of the back catalogs, and in order to do that, you really need to beef up the systems and make it closer to PC. Because this is right around the time you started even getting some remasters. Now, again, that may go in the wrong direction in some ways, but at the same time, it's nice to see that the industry's aware of itself and the need to preserve the games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, you're absolutely right. They're gonna have to start treating it like the movie industry back catalogs, because that's exactly what they are, and there's definitely a market for it, especially right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's really the only thing that's really concerning about the Switch. And I know I'm jumping the boat here a bit, but there's 3 lithium ion batteries in here that are eventually going to go bad, and you're eventually going to have to open them up to replace those batteries, and on both Joy-Cons and the console. And I'm not a big fan of that. I don't like having. They're right there up front, so you can't replace them, but you still have to disconnect them from the motherboard and stuff. It's not a huge problem, but they're not made to be user removable. That's for sure.
Well, it's like the PS3 with the 6-axis controller when they first tried the motion stuff with Lair, and then they went to DualShock 3. But either way, it's not AA's or AAA's. You got to open the thing up, and like you said, that's not for everybody.
Yeah. So and then there's going to be a point where Nintendo's going to stop manufacturing those batteries. And that's going to be another huge problem altogether, because then people are going to have to start making their own batteries, and is that
third party?
Third party, and they're like, that's.
But even those companies are going away. I think what was the Mad Catz just went out of business earlier this year.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. It's getting harder and harder.
Yeah, they've been around forever too. I'm surprised they went. I was sad a little bit, actually.
Yeah.
Well, they banked big on the reboot of Rock Band, and it just didn't work out because they did all the instruments.
Oh, that's right.
That was already done to death. That and Guitar Hero, and
that was something. That was something I wanted to touch more on. If we had more time, I wanted to talk about, because I went through the whole Guitar Hero Rock Band phase. That was a huge part of my life in high school, leading into college, and I really got into those games. I got really good at all the instruments on Rock Band and then the later Guitar Heroes. But then by the time Rock Band 3 came out, I was already out of it. I didn't buy that game or the new instruments. And I kind of... It fizzled out for me after that. But those are definitely big parts of my life when they were big.
Well, we'll have to do an episode just on music games and kind of the history of that and go through it, because there's a lot like that Beatles game they had. A lot of interesting stuff that went on there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was really like an entire era within that generation.
Yeah, this is just proof that we need more time. I hate to do it, but I think we're going to have to do the plugs and wrap up, but I'm glad we've got a lot of material.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So why don't we go ahead and we'll do the plugs. Of course, this is the Zoom Platform Podcast, so you can check us out on zoom-platform.com. Again, that's zoom-platform.com for all sorts of re-releases from tons of publishers. If you want, please check out Cameron and Max's websites. Go ahead, guys.
I'm at iplayoldgames.wordpress.com.
And my music can be found at cinemax.bandcamp.com and soundcloud.com/DJ Cinemax. And if you're not sure of the spelling, you can go ahead and look it up on the previous episodes.
Well, thank you for listening, everybody. And as usual, if you have any questions or want to suggest topics, please email us at podcast@zoom-platform.com. Again, that's podcast@zoom-platform.com. I'm Jordan Freeman.
I'm Max Petrowski.
And Cameron Stark.
And we're signing off. See you next time.
End of line.
Peace.